This is Fantasy Intervention. Now here to intervene with your fantasy life, Shane Manila, Jacob Sanderson, and Chase Vernon.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome on into Fantasy Intervention. Yes, it's just myself tonight. I am solo once again, 2 times in a couple weeks. This is going to be excellent, completely excellent, because we are breaking down Best Ball, the weekly winners contest over there on Underdog. I'm excited. I'm ready to rock and roll on this. I'm going to be hopping into a draft. I'm going to break down the process and how I approach things and what I'm actually doing. Make sure you all check it out over there on youtube.com/fantasyintervention. Once again, that's youtube.com/fantasyintervention. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe, share it if you will. Go share it over there on Twitter. Go share it over there on Facebook. Let's get some more people in the best ball streets. And if you want to do that, make sure you use promo code Fantasy Intervention for a match deposit bonus up to $100. But let's go ahead and let's get into it, because these weekly winners, they're not the same. They are not the same as the typical best ball games or matchups that we've been getting into, right? They're different. They got some oomph to it, right? Because each week, the top upper echelon of teams, they win. They win money each and every week versus waiting until the season-long finale, the tournament, the breakdown, the big finish, the week 17 matchups. No, you win money every single week over there for the weekly winners. So I'm excited to dive into it. I'm excited to dive into the strategy. I've done over 40 teams now. It's kind of crazy because I've only had one 101 where I've gotten to take Justin Jefferson out of all 40 drafts, but I'm still moving along. I'm still putting together a lot of teams that I absolutely love. Hopefully we can get a draft spot tonight that I actually like and appreciate, so that way we can move forward with one of the builds that I've done. Let's go ahead and let's pull this up actually as we discuss it. Let's pull up a mock draft. Excuse me, not a mock draft. Let me pull up the actual draft. There we go. So the weekly winners contest, let me go ahead and click into that so that we can get some rules laid out. Draft size is 12, of course. Max entry is 150. The rake is 10.6%. Each week from weeks 1 through 17, that means no week 18, you get first place gets $20,000 payout. Second place gets a $10,000 payout. Third place, $9,000. Fourth, $8,000. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, $2,000, and $1,000 for 11th through 20th. After that, $450 payout for 21 through 50, a $179 payout for 50 through 100, 100 through 250, $100 payout, 250 through 535, and of course, 500 through 1,000 is a $25 payout. Meanwhile, you end up getting $10 back, which is $5 short of your entry fee if you finish anywhere from 1,000th, if you're the 1,000th finisher, and 7,315. Excuse me on that. So let's go ahead and let's talk about the actual layout or the roster of this. It's pretty simple, nothing crazy. The scoring overall, 0.5 PPR. Meanwhile, you have 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 flex with 10 bench spots. Once again, it is a weekly payout. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to dive in and throw my entry in the ring. Yeah, there is a new puppy fast draft only. We are going to be doing a fast draft tonight as well. I'm going to go ahead and throw it in there, enter in. Let's see how many people we got and see exactly how long I got to talk. All right, so we got 6 more people or so that need to fill this. If you're in the chat, if you're in the show, make sure y'all go join in to an Underdog contest. We can do these weekly winners. If you watch Player Profile or, of course, Roto Underworld, you know that I was doing the DFS shows over there this past year on Fridays for the Big Tilt. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of insight as to what I'm looking at, how I've been drafting. Once again, I've done about 40 teams or so. What's going on, Jamie? Fly Meatwad in the chat. big shout out to you guys for joining us, of course. And if y'all hop in here, you guys can kind of play along with what we're trying to do. I think the biggest misconception with a lot of these best ball drafts is that you're drafting against the people in your league, right? And although you want to keep an eye on what they're doing, you necessarily, the best drafts or the best drafters kind of work together to get their ideal team or their ideal lineups. If we're sitting there and we're trying to, put together a team that kind of ideally maximizes or optimizes your weekly opportunity, typically you're going to be trying to build towards matchups. You're going to be trying to build towards stacking lineups and whatnot. So a lot of the best drafters don't actually, their teams don't contradict each other, right? So I'm not trying to snake this person. I'm not trying to take this guy away from another player. We're going to try to and work together almost to get the best possible lineups for ideally what you have in mind. Obviously, that can't be a consistent. It can't work together. It can't end up happening every single time like we'd want it to, but it does work itself out in most of the games, and you typically still have options as to how your build goes. Let's see. Jamie's at work still, getting off about 30 minutes. What's up, Axel? I'm going to try. My back still's killing me from getting hit by a car a couple weeks ago, so there you go. You got a little bit of the pants there. All right. Let's go ahead and talk about some of these different ways that I'm attacking these best ball drafts, because you got to have a strategy going into these, and it's not the same as the season long optimal lineups, right? Where you're trying to find values, you're trying to find these guys falling in ADP, and although that does help, especially if you're working in your build, there are certain situations where you can actually reach for your guys. One of the optimal ones I like to use is Tua Tagovailoa along with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. There have been weeks, I believe it was week 8 or 9 last year, where they won people a lot of money because they both ended up going off, completely destroying every other lineup out there. I believe the Millie Maker actually had that stack in there as well. But if you end up taking Tyreek Hill at like the 105, 106, 107 range, right? And then you end up grabbing Waddle in the second round, it's highly unlikely that when it comes to your pick, I believe in the 7th round for Tua, maybe 8th or 9th, that Tua is going to be there. You actually have to reach for him, or you have to let him fall to you. The thing is with auto drafting, right? Some of these dipshits that don't understand how to draft, they'll take Tua without any kind of stack. And the thing is you don't want Tua with anybody else, because it's going to be highly unlikely that Tua has a top 10 wide receiver outside of Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill without injury. Now, sure, that could end up resulting in a massive week for one of these guys that's going undrafted. But to reach and have that happen, it's going to work against you for probably 16 out of the 17 weeks that scoring happens. So making sure that you get your guys and reaching for a guy like Tua where you're taking them, 8 picks ahead of ADP isn't that big of a deal when it's typically shunned in most best ball leagues. So don't be afraid to reach. Don't be afraid to go get your guy. Of course, I'm not reaching, 2 rounds ahead, right? But if we're talking a scenario where your stacked guys might not make it back to you, on the turn or for your next pick when they're 14 spots ahead, go ahead and reach for your guy, get your guy to ensure that lineup. Because the way that you're building your rosters for this type of layout, you need for them to have their stacks. You need for them to hit. Outside of maybe a Justin Fields, a Lamar Jackson, maybe a Josh Allen, you're not going to have too many finishes for these quarterbacks where they're not finishing with their primary stacks up front, right? Justin Fields could go one of 3 ways, one of 4 ways, really, maybe even one of 5. We could see a scenario with Cole Kmet, Chase Claypool, Darnell Mooney, or of course DJ Moore, where any one of those guys, and then he also has the rushing upside where he could finish, pretty much by himself. So you don't have to worry about that quarterback as much with the stacks, but pretty much any other quarterback. I guess Jalen Hurts might be another guy who could finish up there without having one of his wide receivers do it. But you primarily want your stacks in these scenarios, especially when it comes to a lot of these builds where you won't have a chance to grab a quarterback, inside, or a top tier quarterback inside of the first, 2 rounds or so. If you're sitting there at the first half of the draft, taking Travis Kelce or Jamar Chase, early, you're not going to have an opportunity to grab a Josh Allen or a Jalen Hurts that often where they can actually perform and get you to that point without their primary weapons being there. So the once again, the type of stages that you're trying to attack. Let's go ahead and go into those so that you know your strategy, because it's a whole step process as to deciding which step you want to take. And a lot of that has to do with where you're drafting. First off, the one that I've seen a lot of people do so far is solely focusing on one team. They grab, of course, Patrick Mahomes, right? They try to end up grabbing Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, Jerick McKinnon, right? And they build around one team, and then they take a couple of receivers from surrounding teams that are in similar matchups that they'll face throughout the season. Typically, it's divisional, but you can still go outside the division. I mean, the Chiefs and Bengals play like Week 17, for example, so you can grab some Bengals if you end up with Jamar Chase for the first pick, and then you end up with Patrick Mahomes with their second-round pick, and then you build the Chiefs up later. Meanwhile, you can grab Higgins, whatever the case is. You kind of stack your lineups around one team, knowing that one team is going to score, and then hoping that the team surrounding will score without having their quarterback outscore Mahomes. That's one way of doing it. The second way, looks like we're about to draft people. Looks like we're about to draft. The second way is stacking all your players on one bye week. I've seen that happen a lot. I believe it's week 7 to week 13, I believe, that have a ton of guys that are on bye. Where did I have it? Right here. Yeah, week 7 and week 13, there's 6 teams on bye each week. I've seen a lot of people go this route where they try to grab the Cincinnati Bengals players along with Joe Burrow, and then they grab the Dallas Cowboys players with CeeDee Lamb if it ends up working out, and then they hope the Higgins falls in the 3rd round. Meanwhile, they grab Dak Prescott later on, Joe Burrow, as I talked about. They grab some Jets players. They try to get a hold of Dameon Pierce as well. So you pretty much attack, or you end up getting all these players that are on the week 7 buys. That allows you to pretty much throw 1 week down the drain, but then you have optimal lineups for the other 16 weeks of the season. I think that's a fun way to kind of go about doing these drafts, but I don't know if that's the optimal lineup that I would try to pursue, because now you're talking about reaching, right? Now you're talking about having to force your team into a funnel where you're focused on drafting guys around that. Once again, I can see it working. I have a few teams that are doing it, but I'm not hyper-focused on going that route. My favorite one is avoiding weeks 5, 7, 10, and 13. I actually have a bunch of sheets, and I was going to save this for a little bit later, but essentially creating a list of players that fit each strategy is kind of critical. And this should actually work out for us pretty well since I'm drafting at the 10th spot overall. But for example, I'm going to be focused on Falcons running backs, Bijan Robinson, of course, and Pitts. I'm going to be focused on quarterbacks. For the Colts, I'm going to be focused on the quarterback stacks with wide receivers, Michael Pittman and Pierce. For the Lions, I'm going to be focused on Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams. I think that the Jags wide receivers, San Francisco wide receivers, Saints wide receivers, and possibly the Pitts wide receivers, plus Pat Freiermuth, are optimal guys to go with as well. Meanwhile, we have running backs for the Patriots, the Packers, and the Commanders. For each one, I actually have a list of the round and which player I'm comfortable taking for each pick to give me the optimal lineup. So if I have a certain route that I'm taking where, hey, I took my running backs, I need to pivot to wide receivers, I have that way, vice versa as well. So having those optimal lineups to avoid weeks 5, 7, 10, and 13 are great. And you might say, why do you want to avoid weeks 5, 7, 10, and 13? Let me see real quick. Let me go into that in 1 second after I check out the draft board. We still have Christian McCaffrey on the board at 107, which is absolutely bonkers. Austin Eckler is on the board. Stephon Diggs is on the board. CeeDee Lamb is on the board. So obviously with us avoiding weeks 5, 13, and 7 right here, Christian McCaffrey would obviously be the optimal guy. But I'm looking at Bijan Robinson square down the barrel. I already talked about how I want to focus on Bijan, of course, and Kyle Pitts, see if I can get that lineup going. Typically, the back half of the drafts, avoiding weeks 5, 7, 10, and 13 work out pretty damn well. So I'm going to continue to pursue that for this upcoming one as long as Bijan is still on the board. If not, I can still go with Amon-Ra St. Brown. But I'm kind of hoping he falls to me in the 2nd round, which can happen from time to time. All right. We had McCaffrey come off the board from DraftBot, Austin Eckler. So I get to take my guy, Bijan Robinson, right here. Let's go with it. All right. So what was I talking about? Avoiding weeks 5, 7, 10, and 13. All right. So when I bring up weeks 5, 7, 10, and 13, weeks 5 actually have phenomenal running backs. So I want to target some of the running back possibilities in here and get some of the stronger running backs that I believe have great matchups in week 5 because Nick Chubb's going to be out, Austin Eckler is going to be out, and Kenneth Walker are going to be out. In terms of week 7, we're going to see 2 great quarterbacks, but primarily the wide receivers and running backs once again. We're going to see Miles Sanders off the board. We're going to see Tony Pollard off the board, Joe Mixon off the board, Derrick Henry off the board, and Dameon Pierce off the board. So this could give me, and Breece Hall. So this could give me some opportunities in the running back lane. Meanwhile, CeeDee Lamb is gone. Both Higgins and Jamar Chase are off the board. We have Treylon Burks, possibly DeAndre Hopkins as of late from what we've been hearing. So that gives me an opportunity for both running backs and wide receivers to exploit in week 7, along with a couple quarterbacks. All right, where are we at? Okay, so we have 4 players on here with a week 10 bye, 5, including week 13. So essentially, you have to pivot all the way down. And this is why I think that it's okay to not, funnel yourself into an exact strategy. It does make it interesting having to go with one of these guys. Oh, great. I ended up with Nick Chubb, who I can't stand out of all players. I can't stand how the desktop app is completely different from the mobile app. I have 0 shares of Nick Chubb up until right now. Great. All right, so we're starting this out strong. We're going to go ahead and go with Nick Chubb. So anyways, in week 10, we have Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, Miami Dolphins up with Tua. We have Jalen Hurts on Philly, and then we have, and this is for week 10 once again, so we have 3 quarterbacks that are in the top echelon of these picks, and then we have Matthew Stafford as well in week 10, who, could be taken off the Cooper Kupp. So not only are you getting rid of elite quarterbacks, you're also getting rid of elite wide receivers. This is an opportunity that I would take to exploit in week 10. Meanwhile, week 13, you have pretty much all over the place, but primarily elite level quarterbacks again with Lamar Jackson, with Josh Allen, with Justin Fields, with Kirk Cousins. You also have elite level wide receivers there as well too. So I'm trying to find quarterbacks that could really exploit weeks 10 and 13, running backs that could exploit weeks 5 and week 7, and then wide receivers that could exploit weeks 7, weeks 10, and to an extent, week 13. Oh, man. I am interested in seeing kind of how this shakes out in terms of the draft, but when you try to avoid those bye weeks, weeks 5, 7, 10, and 13, it makes it somewhat simple to do so in these best ball drafts. Let me go ahead and check out this draft field so I don't make the same mistake that I just made last time. I'm going to go ahead and queue up a few guys. Ramondre Stevenson is on my list. Damn, I really wish I ended up with JT on that last one. JT could have been a good stack. That would have been fun. JT and Bijan Robinson. But I'll take Nick Chubb for now. All right. Let's go ahead and let's talk about the next one. So we have divisional-centric builds, which are somewhat critical. We're going to see a lot of divisional games across weeks. I think it's 10 through 13, or maybe it's 11 through 13. We're going to see a lot of the AFC North play each other, and we're going to see a lot of the AFC South play each other across that stretch. A lot of the teams that I'm seeing built are focusing on building teams within the AFC divisional matchups throughout that stretch. I built a couple teams with that, but I don't like it because you end up seeing almost like blips of values that don't exist throughout the drafts. There's not enough matchups to really sustain that point of competitive nature during those time periods, or essentially points scored. So that's something to keep an eye on for the interdivisional builds, and especially if you're going with the AFC teams. The last one is attacking certain weeks, which I actually really like. So, for example, week 7, I believe you have like the Lions and Ravens, the Chargers, Chiefs, Dolphins, Eagles, and 49ers, Vikings. So building teams around there where you're focused, hyper-focused on 1 week to try and win that big-time money, they could end up hitting. And you never know, they could end up hitting another week as long as you're drafting top-tier offensive weapons or top-tier offensive teams are expecting to score a lot of points. Woo, these solo shows are not as easy as they used to be when you don't do them for a while. All right, so we're coming up on the clock. Obviously, we just saw a few of the guys that I want to go off the board. Ramondre Stevenson was one of them. I'm looking at guys that are primarily focused on the weeks that I talked about avoiding, but I do see Deebo Samuel, who was on my list right here for the he's on my list for the 4th round, essentially. But since I'm drafting so close to the 4th round, I don't really consider this one a reach. I don't want to go with another running back at this point, of course, and I definitely don't want to draft for another bye week for week 7, 10, or 13. So I could go with another week 5 bye guy and just pass on that with the whole running back situation. But I'm going to go ahead and take Deebo here and see what falls to me in the 4th round. I think Deebo actually has a decent upcoming year this season. He talked about being, this past year being one of his worst performances in terms of how he felt he played. Obviously, CMC has a massive part in that. Brandon Ayuk supposedly looking great, but I still think that he's involved, especially early on in the season. We can hopefully take advantage of the early games in this season because honestly, I don't think he's going to have much fantasy valid performances later on in the year. All right, what are we looking at? I really could go with Deshaun Watson stack, essentially, and hope that Nick Chubb gets some receptions in one of the games coming up. That would be fun. We're punting week 5, though. We're punting week 5, and week 5 is a fun week to play. You know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to save it. I'm going to go with Jerry Jeudy, who's averaging over 17 points per game in this format last season while he played or in the games that he was healthy. I'm going to go with Jerry Jeudy and possibly look at a stack for the AFC West coming up. Courtland Sutton. Jerry Jeudy actually was not on my list, but I do have Courtland Sutton down further on the list, which could actually help me balance out some of these matchups. All right. What's our next topic? Creating a list of players that fit each strategy, I think, is absolutely critical. It's pretty much what I'm going on right now for the build out that I'm trying to have. Having these options and knowing who some of these guys that you're checking out are big, and you do have to keep it updated due to ADP and how it changes. So I would definitely at least monitor how your list goes, because if you have a guy, for example, Deebo Samuel, who's slightly climbed up the ADPs and who I was actually planning on taking in the 4th round, doesn't have 4th round ADP anymore, you're going to have to make that sacrifice and pull the trigger a little bit earlier. So keeping that list updated is critical. Step 3, not every pick has to fit the strategy if somebody does fall. So I'm still taking ADPs in a lot of cases that fall like a full round. So for example, on the last pick, DK Metcalf, I think was 7 picks below ADP. It's not quite far enough for me to go ahead and pull that trigger if I'm going off of a certain strategy. However, if we're talking a full round behind and we're talking about a special position such as a tight end, I'm making that happen every single time. I'm worried about ADP at that point more so than I am worried about creating a stack unless it involves a quarterback or a primary pass catching option. All right, we're watching George Kittle take a little bit of fall right now, which I would love to have on my team at this point. We're seeing Brandon Ayuk do the same. That'd be a fun stack to build. I already got Deebo Samuel. Let's have some fun with these guys. All right. As for some of the other aspects that I'm looking at, we already talked about divisional matchups. talked about ADP. We talked about bye week stacking and going ahead and punting on certain weeks, which I'm completely cool with. Picking an NFL week to try to attack. I think paying attention to what's happening with certain players such as Alvin Kamara. So let me check actually ADP on Alvin Kamara, because before he was at 99. But I think that we're going to see a significant uptick in drafting. And typically with best ball, you want to try and avoid guys that raise up in ADP. But that's not the same case for this, because you got to consider it in the same sort of tone as DFS. Where, hey, if a guy ends up raising in value, you got to keep hammering that away up until he actually hits that point in the value, because it doesn't matter if somebody got him earlier on, it's still going to be a unique build. So if you can grab a guy, although it is reaching to an extent, if you can grab a guy that you think is going to exceed his actual value, you keep hammering that away up until it's not there anymore. Even if a guy ends up going up in value from week to week, like a Christian McCaffrey, he didn't end up exceeding his value point up until he hit over 10.2K. What was that, 2 or 3 years ago? It still kept on playing him in your lineups, regardless how expensive he got. So I'm completely fine with still hammering that once again. Let's see. We got some picks coming up. So who am I looking at here? We got George Kittle, who, once again, I said I expected to fall. He's falling tremendously. I love that. I could actually hopefully pick up Brandon Ayuk on the turn if George Kittle lasts. I don't know that he does. We have DJ Moore, who is falling in value to an extent, but I don't have his primary pass-catching weapon. He's week 13. I don't really want to touch that. Meanwhile, we're pretty much surrounded by guys that have that bye week outside of Kyle Pitts, who I love Kyle Pitts. I have Bijan Robinson. That's definitely an offense I want to attack. And now that George Kittle is gone, Kyle Pitts is number 1 on my radar, followed by Brandon Ayuk. And then... oh, God, I'd have to go all the way down to Deontay Johnson to find another guy that I actually like at this point. Let's kill Kyle Pitts. I'm hoping that Kyle Pitts makes it to me. That would be a great pick. He's my number 1 target for round 5, followed by Aaron Jones, if Aaron Jones fell to me. All right. Yes, we got it. We got our Kyle Pitts. So now we have Bijan Robinson, Nick Chubb. God, that's going to make me throw up every single time I say it. I cannot believe it auto-drafted Nick Chubb for me. What the hell? Deebo Samuel, Jerry Jeudy, Kyle Pitts. I'll explain my Nick Chubb hate here in a little bit, but essentially I don't like Deshaun Watson and his running backs. He hasn't produced fantasy viable running backs, and I know that he's only had Lamar Miller, Alfred Blue, guys that are pretty much past their prime, Carlos Hyde. But either way, he doesn't involve them in the offense. And we saw it happen immediately. Well, what I expected to happen happened last year, where all of a sudden Deshaun Watson comes to town and they completely abandon the running game. They abandoned it to an extent. And Deshaun Watson just does not utilize his running backs. He's not just going to start coming into week or year 6 or whatever the case is, 5, I guess, for the years that he's played. I just don't see that happening. He's on average targeted the running back about 65 times a season. And I don't think Nick Chubb's going to see that role, even if he does start targeting his running backs. All right, I'm going Deontay Johnson here. Not a fan of the player, believe it or not, but I do like the fact that he plays week 6. I like his opportunity share. I think that he could be a viable part to this offense, and it works out because I have Nick Chubb, who he obviously faces up against, so I at least have some matchups that work together. Meanwhile, I wanted Marquise Brown. Where did Marquise Brown go? I feel like he's raising up boards. Or is he falling down? Oh, no, he's right here. I could have gone Marquise Brown. Should have gone Marquise Brown. It's all right. That's what I get for talking on a show. All right, talking and drafting. Wahoo. All right, so Yeah, Jamie brings up the only time I ever hoped you were wrong with Nick Chubb. And Nick Chubb, he's just not going to see the red zone work, right? And so when we saw, let me pull up my Twitters. Let me pull up my Twitter because I continue to hammer it home on Twitter about Nick Chubb. And let me make sure that I can actually get my facts and stats straight. All right. Where is it? All right. So last offseason, I did a breakdown as to why I didn't like Deshaun Watson paired with Nick Chubb. I think it was fine to draft, but I'd just be trading away by the time Deshaun Watson got in there. With Brissett, we saw Nick Chubb average 23 points per game, 53.7% snap rate with 1.1 touchdowns per game. With Watson, that jumped down to 15.25 points per game with a 61.3% snap rate and 2.2 touchdowns per game. He only had one touchdown, which was a receiving touchdown after that happened. That game was a freak game, by the way. Nick Chubb had the running backs had 10 targets from Deshaun Watson, which has never happened in his career. With Brissett, the Browns saw 9.6 red zone attempts compared to 7.8 with Watson. So they did see more red zone attempts with Brissett, but it was mostly due to Watson's inability to sustain red zone drives with a 39.3% completion rate. It wasn't the fact that he was bad in the red zone. It was still with the lack of red zone opportunities. It was the usage rate that was involved with that. With Brissett, Chubb saw a 28.3% red zone opportunity share compared to just 17% with Watson. That's 11% drop. So essentially, Nick Chubb would be getting about 66% of the touches in the red zone that he saw prior to that. And even inside the top 5, it's even worse, which I'll go into here in a second. I expected a drop off in production, but what I didn't expect was a drop off in efficiency in between the 20s. The lower usage rate was a given, but I thought that we would see an increase in his efficiency. What we saw pretty much with J.K. Dobbins once Lamar Jackson came to town, where he's averaging like 7.1 yards per carry. In comparison, Nick Chubb went from 5.2 yards per carry to 4.76 yards per carry. Let me go ahead and talk about the numbers from before Watson joined the Browns. Watson ran the ball in 19.2% of the plays that weren't handoffs inside the 20 throughout his career. So the dump-off efficiency rate just isn't there. Meanwhile, Watson only targeted running back on 14.1% of the attempts inside the red zone. Hopkins saw more targets than all the running backs combined. Inside the 5, it jumped up to 28.6% of the time Watson ran, and he only targeted running back on 8.3% of the drop backs inside the 5. Now, this is actually on par with what we saw from Baker in terms of targets to the running back inside the red zone. However, we know Baker had about half the amount of rushing attempts. The volume to the running backs were limited due to the offense and how it runs off play actions and tight ends in close. The issues here become Watson, who has passed 59% of the Texans' plays versus the Browns running the ball in almost 50% of the plays. His rushing attempts count for 25.7% of the team's rushing attempts. So not only were we getting less passes inside the red zone to the running backs, the rushing attempts could drop as well. I just do not like Nick Chubb in this offense with Deshaun Watson. I think that it's built to pass. We've seen smoke now with them drafting Cedric Tillman, and then they go out and they trade for Elijah Moore right after trading their entire draft room for Deshaun Watson in the years prior. It's just showing us that they want to pass the ball, right? They don't want to run the ball. They don't believe that running the ball is the right thing to do, which is the same direction we're seeing with a lot of these teams. All right. I don't have much time. I'm going to go ahead and star James Conner. He does fit into here. James Conner, Monty, Pickens, and Dotson were all on my list. James Conner was the first one up there, so I got the guy that I was hoping would fall to me. Up next on my list, round 8, Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson is somewhat of a reach here. We're hoping. Oh, it said I didn't read my notes all the way through. I was supposed to read for Pittman in that range for where I took Deontay Johnson. If not, I was hoping Pittman would fall to me at that pick. He didn't do so. I'm still going to take Anthony Richardson. See, this is where the James, damn it, the Jonathan Taylor pick could have came in. I could have picked Jonathan Taylor instead of freaking Nick Chubb if it didn't auto draft for me. And then I'd be sitting here with Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor, and I could take Alec Pierce later on in the draft. I hate myself for that. I hate Nick Chubb. Why do I have Nick Chubb on my team? Why? Freaking auto draft, man. All right, I'm reaching. Still going Anthony Richardson here. I'm just looking across a few other players. I only have one name written down for round 8. Typically, I have more, but for this draft strategy, I'm going Anthony Richardson. We're going to have to do a double stack with either Jelani Woods and Alec Pierce, or Alec Pierce and Jahan Downs, something along those lines, just to hope that one of those outlier weeks we get a wide receiver 1 performance. All right. Where are we? All right. So I'm now hoping that JMO, Gibson, Kamara, Sutton. There's the Sutton one I was talking about. Sutton fall to me. If Sutton falls to me in round 9, I'll go ahead and take Sutton, and then I'll end up swapping out my Jared Goff pick for Russell Wilson, because I did not get Amon-Ra St. Brown with that pick. The other option, if Sutton doesn't fall to me, I don't know. I could get JMO. If I get JMO in this upcoming round, I don't think he's going to make it back to me, but I'll start him up. I'll start Michael Thomas too. If either one of those guys make it back to me, I'm in an optimal spot to go with 3 quarterbacks, which could be interesting. Antonio Gibson is also on my list. I have Cortland Sutton on my list. And then I have Alvin Kamara. Oh, man. All right, so I'm looking at Derek Carr stacks. I'm looking at Jared Goff stacks. Where's Jared Goff sitting, by the way? Jared Goff is at 130 ADP, so that would be 2 rounds away, which is what I'm looking at, because I'm looking at A.J. Dillon, Freiermuth. But if I could have 2 of those guys fall to me, James Williams, Michael Thomas, I'll take those guys almost back-to-back, and then I'll end up grabbing both Jared Goff and Derek Carr later on. But I'd much rather have Russell Wilson with Cortland Sutton. What are we looking at with Russell? He's right after, so I could take quarterbacks in back-to-back picks for the 11th and 12th round, which I think I like a lot more. In that area, I already have Derek Carr, Pierce. Actually, no, I switched down Derek Carr. I have Pierce, and I have Jalen Warren. I think I have Kendra Miller in that range. All right. What strategy do you guys like over there in the draft? If you guys have any questions, please put them in the chat. Make sure you all go hit subscribe on the page on YouTube, youtube.com/fantasyintervention. Use promo code CIRCLE over there at trophysmack.com to get a free ring along with the purchase of a trophy or a belt. Once again, that's trophysmack.com. Oh, man. I'm probably going to cut this out at an hour. I'll update my later picks over there on Twitter at @FF_intervention, or I'll put it in the chat maybe at a later date. God, I got 3 picks still on the board. I'm only 7 picks away. This is risky right here. This is nerve-wracking. 3 picks still, 6 left. Oh, JMO got taken from me. Didn't really get sniped because he was falling in ADP, but he is gone. So JMO is off the board for me. David Njoku is interesting because I already have the Nick Chubb week 5 bye. Who does Atlanta playing week 5? Atlanta schedule. course. Gets me the Atlanta Braves schedule. Falcons schedule. All right. We have the Texans, and we know they're really good on the outside. They're not great against them, so I could go David Njoku and not have to worry about Kyle Pitts not putting up a good week 5. That's interesting. And there goes Cortland Sutton and Michael Thomas. Damn it, they almost made it to me. I'm actually really interested right now in going David Njoku. That really sucks. There goes my double stack. Concept. I haven't had that happen to me yet, I don't think. All right. I'm going David Njoku here. I don't really see anybody else that I'm really interested in outside of Samaje Perine, which already have enough clunkers in the running back room. Outside of Samaje Perine, I guess Freiermuth actually fits. I could end up going. Let's go Freiermuth. Let's go Patty F. Already got Deontay Johnson. This leaves the window open for me to go with Kenny Pickett's stack, and although that's so gross, and I hate saying that, it still gives me some play space with Nick Chubb and the divisional matchups. God, that's gross, but I'll take it. My hope is that A.J. Dillon makes it back to me at this point. Talk about clunkers, but he has late season appeal. I just don't love his matchups, but screw it at this point. We're kind of fucked. All right, would I go Juju or Bateman in the Scott Fishbowl? Oh, man. Point per first down, I'm probably going Juju, but I really still like Bateman in the Scott Fishbowl. That's actually a tough question. I think that depends on my build. By that point, you're in what, round 10, round 9, somewhere in there. So I think it just depends on my build and my stacks. Yep, I'm doing it. I'm pulling the trigger on A.J. Dillon. So that means, God, man, I didn't have any of the dudes I wanted to fall to me. I got to start looking for, let's see. Yeah, I'm going to end up having some really gross stacks in this one. I've got to keep my eyes open for Dolchich. But I got Freiermuth, so that would leave me with a triple tight end build. That's fine because the volatility of the position for this type of performance is so out there. Outside of Travis Kelce and maybe Mark Andrews, there's nobody that's going to give you that week-to-week dependency. I mean, George Kittle could give you a tight end 1 week, but he can also give you nothing. So even with George Kittle, I consider getting 3 tight end builds. I think having difference in lineups is very appealing, and I think that there are weeks that when you double tight end builds, but you just never know when they happen. So going with the double tight end build with this, I think still could net you positive returns. Zay Jones is interested. Nope, he just went off the board. Ooh, this draft did not go my way. All right. Oh, yeah, 12th round. So, yeah, you're way far back at that point. Meanwhile, you have Judy, Marquise, and Pickens as your wide receivers. I think that's great for the Scott Fishbowl, especially Marquise. I think that he's going to have a sneaky good value being the wide receiver 1 over there on the team. Meanwhile, Pickens, interesting. Judy, very interesting. And I'm not even a Judy guy. If you guys have any other questions, put them in the chat, of course. Make sure I'll leave some comments over there if you're watching after the show. I'm definitely going to cut this out at probably the hour mark or maybe the round mark. We'll see when it starts to get interesting. I definitely want to complete some stacks for y'all so y'all can see which stacks I'm going with. But it's not looking like anybody's going to let me have my stuff tonight. This is what happens when you draft at night. I draft all my stuff early in the morning when there's a bunch of experts on. Drafting at night, man, is trouble. Well, I've seen DraftBot in a lot of morning drafts. All right. Romeo Dubs, you're up on my list to play with A.J. Dillon. Meanwhile, I have Juju Smith-Schuster, Rondale Moore, both in play as well. We start focusing on the wide receiver room. It's pretty weak right now. I'm not looking at too many optimal lineups. It looks like I'm going to mail it in maybe week 9, maybe week 11 as well. That's fine because week 11 is a busy week. I think that's the week that there's no buys. No, week 11 has 4 buys. It's week 12 that has no buys. Week 11 is tricky, man. I'm sorry. Yeah, week 11 is tricky. That's all the interdivisional matchups. There's going to be a lot of high-scoring games in that one, so I really don't care mailing that in. The teams that are on bye are the Falcons, Colts, Patriots, and New Orleans Saints. So that's not a lot of DFS viable options anyways. It's going to be a high-scoring week. It's probably going to be the highest-scoring week on the slate. All right, I'm going to pick away. I have 2 of my guys left wide open for me. New England doesn't really give me a benefit, so I'm really hoping that it's Rondo Moore that lands to me. I also have I'm glad that I saw that before I made that pick because Russell Wilson should actually be the pick here to stack with Jerry Jeudy, and then hopefully I can get Greg Dulcich. I'm looking right here, and I do have a guy with 2 quarterbacks already. This guy needs a wide receiver. But I doubt that he goes, I should go Dulcich here. Go 3 tight end builds. I'm going to do that because that's going to prevent anybody from taking, hopefully, taking Russell Wilson. And I'm going to mail wide receiver to the next round. That's a tough call. Now I have the triple stack with Russell Wilson. I wish I would have had some Javonte Williams in there as well. No, he took Russell. He didn't even have anybody that's Why would he do that? It's so I'm looking at the list right now. He doesn't have anybody outside of Samaje Perine. That's completely counterproductive. Samaje Perine's not going to be the big pass catching back that they need. That was frustrating. That stack should have made it back to me. Now it's completely pointless as to why I have the triple build. God damn it. Needless to say, this team probably isn't going to make it too far. But I do at least have Arizona and San Francisco stacks. I've got some Cleveland and Pittsburgh games. Neither one of those really sound high scoring, to be honest. But it's still there. I should probably grab some NFC South guys and some AFC South guys to try and boost Anthony Richardson's scoring upside. Hopefully get a shootout. But honestly, at this point, I'm kind of hoping that the games that Anthony Richardson goes off in aren't shootouts, that they're very one-sided. So maybe I'll actually avoid that completely. If Anthony Richardson's in a shootout or a high-scoring game, he's likely going to need Jonathan Taylor involved and Michael Pittman involved. So I'm kind of hoping for free games to this point where he just runs in for 3 touchdowns on a random occasion. Not going to lie to you guys, this is probably my least favorite team that I've built in a long time. Yeah, find me. Well, there's just no point in taking that. I feel like this has been kind of like the trend for this entire draft where people are just taking, weird guys. Just makes no sense. Like Anthony Richardson, you could take solo, right? But you can't take Russell Wilson solo because he's not going to ever perform at that high-end level I needed. And I missed it. It might have been an auto draft because I was looking at something else, but that's a stupid pick. Yeah, Jamie. I don't think the Cleveland team sucks. I think Cleveland's going to be pretty good. I just think that the Pittsburgh side of things, both teams are going to end up kind of drowning that one out. Give me some insight. When was the last time? Let me look up the last few scores for Steelers Browns history. Okay, so 28-14, 29-17, 14-26, 15-10. You have to go all the way back to the playoffs. So last regular season game, we do have one that reached 46 points. That's good. 46 points is okay. It's still not going to win you anything in DFS. We saw it hit 46 points. There's one that hit 45 points. It's one that the Browns and Pittsburgh Steelers for regular season games do not put up picks. I mean, they do not put up points. It just doesn't exist. So when it comes to stacking those two teams against each other, like, it just makes absolutely no sense. As you can see, I have Alec Pierce teed up. Hopefully I can get that so I at least have a little bit of something, involved with Anthony Richardson. But yeah, Jamie, like, it's not Cleveland that sucks. It's the Steelers Cleveland games that typically suck. It's bad, weather. We see crazy wind, we see crazy snow, we see crazy conditions, rain, right? And it just ends up being like a low-scoring game. The one that ended up hitting high, I think, was a playoff game in January of 2021. Maybe it wasn't. It has a star next to it. And I don't see what the star indicates, but I'm up on the clock. So I'm going to go ahead and take Alec Pierce, Indianapolis Colts. If that guy doesn't take Denzel or Marvin Mims, I'm sorry, not Denzel Mims, Marvin Mims, it's going to piss me off to the nth degree. I will not understand it. Okay, at least took Marvin Mims, at least, but fuck that guy for real. He took Kyler Murray as well, and he doesn't have a single Arizona wide receiver. That is so bizarre, man. God, I hate people that don't know how to play this stupid game. All right. I'm looking at my options, and I really want to take Kenny Gainwell here. I have Arizona. They do have a matchup. It would make sense that Kenny Gainwell would play Week 17 up against Arizona, and they would get up by so much, Kenny Gainwell would take all the snaps, or Kenny Gainwell is the only healthy one by that point. So I'm taking Kenny Gainwell. I know I already have my running back set, but I'm going to go ahead and finish that off. I'm not going to take any more running backs, I don't think. I'm going to go with Kenny Gainwell to carry me to a Week 17 win, although it's not looking that way for any other position. Meanwhile, I do think that Kenny Gainwell does see a decent amount of touches throughout the process. Yeah, Kenny Gainwell just keeps falling, and I don't really get it, Jamie. I don't. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah, that's rough. I'm looking at Fly Meatwad saying Tua and Pickett going solo in one earlier when he had Waddle and Hill and Pickens and Johnson. That's so detrimental to your builds because there's not too many other quarterbacks where, hey, if both those guys go off for Waddle and Hill, that any quarterback could beat Tua, because Tua's probably throwing for 4 touchdowns, maybe 5 touchdowns in those matchups. Maybe a Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson for like the Week 17 matchups. Maybe Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, but you can't get Stephon Diggs at that point. There's no way that Josh Allen beats out Miami without Stephon Diggs getting minimum 2 touchdowns if Tua throws for 3 touchdowns or 4 touchdowns. I just don't see that happening. So that's rough, man. Yeah, you just need one big pop week, but either way, it's still tough to come by. Like, I'd rather have my quarterback stacks work for weekly winners than I would for the season long. Like I could deal with Hill and Waddle and not have Tua. I can't do it for weekly winners. There's just not too many opportunities where you're going to see both those guys go off, and Tua isn't at least the quarterback 3 on that week. And anybody that has a chance to finish in the top 3 quarterbacks of that week that doesn't need the quarterback stacks, it's they're all going early on in the drafts outside of Justin Fields. A-Rich is one. A-Rich is a guy that could get you there without having him completely stacked up. Still tough, though. All right, I'm 6 picks away. I'm looking at Curtis Samuel because I do have Deebo Samuel. Curtis Samuel and Deebo Samuel face off in Week 17. And he has a Week 14 bye, which is in line with the Cardinals, who I'm kind of punting during Week 14. And then after that, it's Jaden Reed to run with A.J. Dillon if Curtis Samuel doesn't make it to me. What I'm hoping is that Curtis Samuel stays on the board. I can do either one with those guys. Ooh, and I Brock Purdy come up. I don't even know how to judge for these guys, but this guy has 3 quarterbacks already. This guy has 2. I wouldn't assume, once again, I've pretty much been an asshole out of myself. He does have Brandon Ayuk to take as the 3rd quarterback to stack with. The reason we're talking about 3 quarterbacks to stack with is because, I mean, like even Josh Allen had, I think, 10 weeks where he was a top 5 wide receiver, top 3 quarterback, top 3 quarterback. Josh Allen you need quarterbacks that can perform multiple weeks because the position is so volatile. It's so easy to put up big time points. I'm going to hope that Purdy makes it back to me. I really am. I'm going to go with Curtis Samuel right now. We'll see what happens. Has not been good luck so far. If not, I can go with the Kenny Pickett stack. I'm kind of hoping that Kenny Pickett makes it to me in the 17th round. Whew. I seriously think this guy is trying, I think I pissed him off at some point in the draft, and now he's just trying to take players that he thinks that I would take. Why would he take Sam Howell? He doesn't have, what do these players offer him? What does Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, and Sam Howell offer this guy? It's completely bizarre. Let me go ahead and do this full screen real quick. These are his quarterbacks, right? And then you go down and you look at his wide receivers. He doesn't have any wide receivers that fit the bill. Marvin Mims he picked up after. Looking at my team now, but God, man. I think he's literally just trying to screw over my team this entire time. I think that's it. That has to be it. All right. Jamie said, would you rather take Rachaad White in the 8th or Gibson in the 9th value-wise, or take both? I think that both offer individual values that are completely opposite of each other. I think that Rachaad White is a guy who can offer you independent value from week to week with a very good floor but a limited ceiling. I think that Gibson is a guy that can give you a phenomenal ceiling every week but might give you nothing in a floor. In terms of best ball, I'd much rather have Gibson than Rachaad White, but it's pretty close. By that point, you're just hoping to get a floor for a lot of your running backs. Yeah, you either piss him off or you suck shit. Man, I think I can suck a nut. I talked about at the beginning of the show how these types of contests and whatnot, you typically don't have to worry about people doing this kind of shit to you. And look what happens. Freaking have it happen to me the entire freaking show. Just getting shit on. I did reach the hour mark. I just saw that, Jamie. I'm going to try to see. Wait, did Pickett come off the board? I think Pickett came off the board. Yeah, there's really nothing else for me to kind of break down. A lot of these picks are just going to be me trying to navigate what's going to happen. It's going to be a lot of wide receiver picks. Just give you an idea of who I'm looking at. Devontae Parker would be in play. Let's see. I probably wouldn't go Marvin Jones. This is where I would probably differentiate my picks. Josh Downs is in play, but I might try and take some guys that have high upsides with very limited floors or very low floors. Guys like Michael Wilson, who could catch multiple touchdown passes. He's the biggest receiver over there for Arizona, so they could use him as a possession receiver. He's going to have very limited weeks in terms of upside on a regular basis, but if he gets 2 touchdown passes in a week, don't be surprised. That's very startable in the flex. Matt Collins over there for Atlanta could give you a week where he has, 4 receptions for 136 yards and 2 touchdowns. We saw it last year with the Raiders, and I think that it could very well has happened off the play action over there for the Falcons this upcoming year. Let's see. Deonta Hardy with the speed over there in Buffalo off the play action fake once again. He's a very slippery wide receiver, so I could take a shot on that. It's not including the bye weeks that I was looking at, by the way. Oh, man. There's just nobody really that I'm like, I got to have him on my roster. So let me go ahead and take Josh Downs. We're late enough in the draft. Oh, there's only 2 picks left. I'll just finish it out. I wish I didn't have all my quarterbacks sniped from me. Yeah, he took Kyler Murray after I took Rondale Moore. He took Sam Howell after I took Curtis Samuel. And then he took freaking Russell Wilson after I took Greg Dulcich. I really need a guy with the ceiling, I think, at quarterback if I'm going to win any of these weeks. But none of these guys want to roll out solo. Desmond Ridder. That's my dude. I'm going Desmond Ridder to pair with Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts. You can just do dump offs, and it'll get them there. That's my pick. That's a good pick. All right. Who's your favorite late round wide receivers? Paris Campbell, I love DJ Chark. Terrace Marshall, I see a world where he actually performs. Menchie, no. Nico, no. Palmer, no. Van Jefferson for this format excites me if you have Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp already on your roster, or if you have Cam Akers, because I think Van Jefferson can get you there with Cam Akers vulturing touchdowns from Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp. So you get like 1 touchdown from Justin Jefferson with like 5 receptions on 100 yards receiving, and then Cam Akers can have 2 rushes, or 20 rushes for X amount of yards with 2 touchdowns, and that could actually get you there. So I like Van Jefferson if you have Cam Akers, or if you have Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp. I think either one can end up working. Fly Me Wad, yes, this was an absolutely ridiculous draft, but I got out of it. I'm okay with the end result. It's not my favorite draft I've ever done, but at least I end up having stacks at all my quarterback positions, although they're not my favorite stacks. I really didn't have as many in lineup correlations that I was looking for. But it happens, man. You just got to roll with it. This is actually my 5th draft of the day, so I'm kind of brain dead at this point. Listen, if y'all want to go check out my stuff, go over there, head to youtube.com/fantasyintervention. Go hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'll be here again. I might have to skip next week because I'll be in LA for the Scott Fishbowl draft. I'm hoping Gator Jay has some free time and come in and cover for me. Have a guest in here as well. Make sure you go check that out next Wednesday at 8 o'clock. Hopefully it'll be live. If not, we will be back with you guys the following Wednesday. And then it's getting close to season. We're about to go full steam ahead for our in-season shows, and I'm very excited about that. Thank you guys for tuning in, and thank you all for letting us intervene with your fantasy football life. We're out.